Okay, so we are live. I'm here with Alex. Alex, are you there?
I am there.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk to a young man from Australia. What's happening there? I know things are rough in Australia now because of the so-called pandemic. Can you talk just a tiny little bit about how that's going for you there? Are you safe and healthy and happy?
Yeah, luckily I am. I know there are, it's getting worse. Numbers recently hit 800 cases a day. I think we may have had that in the last, the quote unquote first wave. But, we haven't had anything like this since. Like I said, I'm very lucky to, have two parents who can work from home. A lot of people aren't, and I have my own space and my own computer, but.
And are your siblings there at home too?
Yes, all three of them.
Wow.
Two older sisters and one older brother.
Do you get along generally?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's like, especially like, even when we're all in the same house, we don't see each other much. We generally keep to our own.
Oh, okay. So it's a big enough house, you have space and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And which season, which of the 4 seasons are you in? Do you have 4 full seasons there?
We do. It's not Narnia. I think we're in winter now, coming up on getting out of winter.
Oh, okay.
So I assume it's summer for you.
Yeah, it's very, very hot here. And we sadly, we don't have a lot of seasons here. We have basically really hot and really cold. And a lot of snow in the winter.
Yeah,
You don't have snow?
Oh, so some kind of much southern parts of Australia have snow. Not my area. For me, it just kind of like, you use Celsius, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So it gets down to like 5 degrees for us, maybe 4 degrees at night at the kind of like coldest.
Wow.
But then at the hottest, it can get up to like 45 degrees in summer.
Yeah, it's about 40 here now in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So that's pretty hot for us. And it's humid. The difference is it's humid here. I don't know what it's like there, if it's dry or humid there, the heat.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like not particularly dry or humid at the moment.
Okay. So let's talk about God. And
Sure.
I see your avatar is on The Origin of Species by Darwin. I don't want to get into my young Earth creationism versus your theory of evolution, but somewhere near the middle or the end, we can sort of get into it a little bit if you want.
Yeah, sure.
But first, I know that you mentioned that maybe you had a couple of ideas, maybe a list of topics or something like that. Did you want to go through it quickly, an overview, just before we pick and choose which topics are most interesting to get into, or did you just want to dive right into the first one?
So the first one is, in my opinion, actually pretty interesting. It is basically Christianity is built on the idea of free will. Free will doesn't exist, therefore Christianity is wrong. That's interesting. It also, I just have like a bunch of kind of debunking notes, quote unquote, on like, things like the Kalam cosmological argument, ontological argument, just kind of common things that are brought up and how I think they don't work.
Okay.
I don't think the Bible is a reliable historical source.
Yeah. That's less interesting. That's less interesting because it's only people who believe in God who take the leap of faith into religion. Okay. So let's focus on free will. That's the most interesting thing that you mentioned from all the topics. So you're a hard determinist. Is that fair to say?
No. I'm not necessarily a determinist because I know that there are certain ideas in quantum mechanics and we don't know if they're actually determined yet or not. So there is a chance that things can be truly random. But that has nothing to do with my ideas of free will.
Okay. A lot of people bring this up hoping there's some wiggle room to opt out of a hard determinism. But there is the little problem of the principle of sufficient reason, which I mentioned in my call to Matt on the Atheist Experience. Had you looked at my main thesis, which is that the PSR plus naturalism equals hard determinism, and what did you think of it?
Well, so the principles of sufficient reason, as I understand it, is basically everything has a cause, right?
Well, no, it goes beyond that, but that's a subset of the ramifications. Is that every natural effect has a cause.
Yeah. Well, I think it's everything has a reason.
Yeah, everything has a reason, and everything has its reason in itself or in another. And there's only one being who has its reason in itself, and that's what we call the uncaused first cause, or God, the first mover, the unmoved mover.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about the cosmological argument, we can get into that. But I don't necessarily, I mean, we don't know if the principle of sufficient reason is true.
Yeah, well,
I mean, like I said, I mean, there are kind of things that happen in quantum fields, which I'll admit I'm in no way an expert on,
yeah,
but they seem to be truly random, and we haven't found causes for them yet.
Right. But the scientist always asks questions, and the answer to every question can be phrased with a sentence that begins with the word because. Okay? So
That's true, yeah.
and because just means it's that there's a cause, right? From the cause. Because.
Yeah, right.
It comes from the French and from the Latin. So the fact that a scientist will never not ask why or how or what or when proves that they believe implicitly, at least tentatively at least, in the PSR. And if you want to prove if you want to prove the validity, the universal validity of the PSR, all you need to do, you can prove it logically and rationally and deductively. All you need to do is assume the opposite and then follow that assumption to its logical conclusions, which will always entail a contradiction. So assume that there is an uncaused effect in this natural world. And then zoom in on that hypothetical uncaused effect in this natural world. And zoom in particular, not only on the uncaused natural effect, but in the interface between that and everything else that we encounter in the laboratory or even in our day-to-day experience, which is well ordered, which is subject to cause and effect, which is constantly never violating the law of causality, the principle of causality, which says that every effect has a cause. So we would need to look at the mechanism that provides for an interface between an uncaused natural effect and then the natural world that we're always bumping into and always interacting with, which always obeys cause and effect. And we would need to ask a simple question. Is that mechanism, is that interface itself uncaused or caused? And so if you want to avoid an infinite regression, you're going to, at some point, you're going to have to say that part of that mechanism, that interface, obeys the laws of causality, and therefore there is... Do you see where I'm going with this? There is no possible way, because it is manifest that cause and effect sometimes exists. The postulation that you're making is that there may be effects that are uncaused. But the problem that I'm trying to zoom in on here is that there's an interface. There is necessarily an interface. For example, like in the quantum world, every macro particle, every macro event that we can look at and examine using Newtonian mechanics is comprised necessarily of some atomic particles and these quantum elements.
So I agree with you there. I guess I would say though, like, things can have mechanisms and still be truly random. Like, let's imagine a world where I roll a dice, right? And ignoring the fact that we can calculate the dice roll with Newtonian physics, right? Imagine we couldn't. This is some kind of quantum dice roll. I can still cause the dice to roll, but not predict the outcome, right? Like, it's possible in the same way that, like, maybe in quantum mechanics, sure, it has a cause, but those causes can still lead to random events.
Right, but the problem that you face is that every exception that you want to smuggle into the natural world is participating in something that is always predictable. Okay,
so if I were to grant the principle of sufficient reason, right, I'm not necessarily convinced, but I'll entirely grant it for the sake of argument.
Sure.
Okay, so I guess I'm locked into hard determinism. That doesn't change my view that free will doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, so I guess where are you going with this?
Well, if you want to live in a world where your reasoning is not free, and the love that you mime or mimic or theatrically perform with your loved ones, like for example, your mother presumably loves you and you love her, and your siblings, there's a sort of sibling rivalry, but there's also sibling love there, presumably. With your friends, there's a certain platonic friendship you have for your friends. And if you, I don't know what kids get up to these days, but if you have a significant other, girlfriend or whatever they call it in Australia,
Not anymore.
if you've ever had one, then if it went beyond physical attraction and lust, then there was a possibility that you could have had love, a romantic love, right? And you would not want to say, you would never want to admit that this is just the mechanical working out of the inevitable. You would want to say that I loved her and she loved me, and okay, it didn't work out, but there's always that hope for the future.
Don't most people though admit that love is kind of irrational? I mean, like I don't think most people would agree. I don't think most people would say that they choose to love someone. Like, you just fall in love. It just happens.
Right, but once you've been married for 26 years, as I have, you'll see
Fair.
You'll see different phases in love. First, there's that initial attraction, which you didn't expect, and it's a surprise, and it's wonderful. And this was the last human on earth that I would ever have guessed that I would be attracted to, but she was the one. It just happened to be the one. And when you know, you know. Okay. I resisted her. She pursued me, and I was interested in her on a subconscious level. And I had been putting up a resistance. I don't want to fall in love with this woman because she's not what I expected, right? I expected a long-haired hippie and a long flowing silk skirt and this sort of thing. But I just gave into it because she's the one, right? And I actually had a dream where I was in a position where I had to make a choice, either kiss her and commit or refrain from kissing her, and that would end the relationship. So there's something magical, mystical, and mysterious about those early days. But then you go into the honeymoon period, and there's lots of good stuff in there, and then you have your first little conflict, and then 26 years later, it's something completely different, and it's much better, and there's a lot more choice in it. It's like, I choose to put you first. I choose to cater to your needs, even though those needs are bizarre. I choose to avoid annoying you, even though the things that annoy you about me, I think, are perfectly rational and sane, and this is how you're supposed to roll up the toothpaste tube, right? But there's a lot of choice that goes into it at that point. I choose to will only the good for you. And this is what the Catholic definition of love is: choosing to will the good for the other, just as you will the good for yourself. So when Jesus said to love your enemies, he didn't mean that you have to really, 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 really like them, because that's absurd. What you have to do is you have to will for them the highest good, just as you will for yourself the highest good. So this is a misunderstanding, I think, that atheists have a hard time grasping.
Do you mean more just like kind of hoping the best for them and hoping that they'll kind of fix themselves and change and, turn into better people?
Yeah, like if you want to use simple terms, like I would rather that everyone had knowledge rather than ignorance, and health rather than sickness, and beauty rather than ugliness, because beauty goes with health, and health goes with justice, and justice goes with unity, and unity goes with peace, and peace goes with, they're all united in God, from my perspective. All of the transcendentals, like unity, goodness, justice, beauty, and all the other perfections, health, everything else, peace, love, they're all identical with themselves. They're all identical among themselves, and they're all identical with that uncaused first cause that I call God.
I know what you mean. I guess so. You're basically, what you told me kind of at the start though was that, like, isn't it kind of depressing to live in a world where you don't get to choose, right? Yeah. That's how it sounded. But I'm not willing to base my beliefs on what sounds depressing and what doesn't, because I feel I guess I don't choose to feel it, but I feel a sense of responsibility to only hold true beliefs, regardless of how depressing they are.
Yeah, but don't you intuitively know that the truth is better than any lie, any fantasy, any mistake, any error, do you not intuitively know that the truth is better? That's why you pursue the truth
Yes,
above
the
all
truth
things.
is better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the truth is better. So it's, by definition, it's never truly depressing, if that's the word you want to use. It's never,
Yeah, okay.
it's always a good thing to pursue the truth and to be honest. And no Christian, I think, will deny that there is a lack of goodness in this world, in this fallen world. From our perspective, it's a fallen world. It's a good world ontologically, but it's fallen. But no one would be so foolish as to deny that there's suffering and there's corruption in politics and there's corruption in medicine. Guess what? There's corruption in medicine. People wake up. So, we're not naive, at least most of us, those of us who are sane and religious, we're not naive about the evils of this world. But evil is defined as a privation of the good. It's a lack of goodness. And so you are ontologically good by nature, evil by choice. This is what St. Augustine said about humans.
That's interesting. I would, my positions on morality get a little bit complicated, but I guess I would just say, people are evil. People do suck. I don't see how this is entirely relevant to my point that free will doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, my point was that the truth, if you, first of all, Jesus said, if you seek the truth, you'll find the truth. If you knock, you'll be answered, okay? So I was not only an atheist for 25 years, longer than you've been alive, but I was an atheistic Satanist, which means that I mocked and ridiculed Christianity above all the other religions. I mocked it the most, and I mocked and ridiculed the Bible, and I understand perfectly well why the atheist has disdain for Christianity above all the other religions.
Actually,
I fully understand that.
Can we talk about that in particular? So what made you go from an atheist to a Christian? Because I think that would be probably a really interesting point of discussion.
Yeah, for sure. My listeners have heard this a million times, but I'll just share it with you as briefly as I can. It was philosophy. It was the pursuit of the truth. And when I was your age, you're 16, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was actually a couple of years younger than you. I was 14 years old. I was a good little Protestant Christian boy who went to church, said his prayers, and in my family, I was the most excited and eager Sunday morning to go off to church, and I loved God, and I pray every night fervently. And then one night when I was 14 years old, I said my prayers, I went to bed, I closed my eyes, I went to sleep, and I woke up an atheist. What happened in the middle of the night? Well, I had a dream about Jesus, and there were no words exchanged. Jesus was standing on a desert isle like you might see in some old-fashioned cartoons, where it's a small island with one palm tree in the center of this perfectly small island. And Jesus is there waving to me in a very friendly manner. His look is one of love and of kindness, patience, just acceptance, seeing me for who I am and accepting me as I am. And the wave, I guess, was a wave goodbye, because when I woke up from this pleasant dream in which nothing really was communicated other than he sees me and he acknowledges me and he loves me.
You just didn't believe?
I just didn't believe anymore. And so from the age of 14, I started diving into philosophy.
So when you turned, what was it, 25, did you say?
No. 25 years later, at the age of 39.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I came back. Yeah.
So what, I'm assuming you say you dived into philosophy. So is this some kind of philosophical argument that you heard?
No. I was not pursuing God as far as I knew. I was pursuing the truth, and this is why I encourage you to pursue the truth, and this is why I'm not terribly worried about you. I'm not going to lose any sleep tonight about you and your eternal destiny, okay? Because if you can promise me that you love the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's awkward, even if it's unexpected, if you can promise me that you will pursue the truth That's all you need. Okay, that's more than most atheists can promise. But you're young, you're relatively innocent. I'm not saying that you're perfectly innocent, because I know kids these days lose their innocence very, very young. But it was my pursuit of the truth was very much in an atheist track. I was pursuing right from the very beginning sort of some dead ends in terms of free will. Free will was the first thing on the table, and the determinism. I explored the first. I was going to say religion, but the first philosophy that I explored actually is the most refuted of all the modern philosophies, which is logical positivism. Do you know about this?
No, but I have Google.
Okay. It's basically saying that everything is either tautologically true, meaning true by definition, or nonsense. Those are the two categories for the logical positivist, okay?
Yeah.
And it's very, very attractive to the young man who's idealistic, who's searching for the truth, and who does not want to compromise his principles. It's very attractive, and I dove into that, and of course wrestled with some of the obvious problems and paradoxes, because I knew that deep down I knew that there's more to the story than that, because it's a messy affair, life, with all of its complications and exceptions, and it's not just a nice, neat rule book of logic. Life is very complicated, and there is undeniably a mysterious spiritual element. Even as an atheist, I was aware of it. I tried to suppress it. I tried to ignore it and just focus on rock solid logical deduction, right?
There are only three things that I really have as like quote unquote principles.
Okay.
They're basically induction, deduction, and the three laws of logic.
Nice. The laws
Like
of thought.
that's I don't know,
Non-contradiction.
Yeah, non-contradiction,
Excluded
identity,
middle.
and excluded middle. Yeah.
Nice. Amazing.
So that's my grounding basis. I don't think you can get anywhere without those, but I also think you can get everywhere with them.
Yep, for sure. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I personally don't put a lot of stock in induction. I would just focus on deduction and the laws of thought, as I call them, the laws of thought. And you can get a lot out of that.
You kind of have to have induction though, because like otherwise, how do I know that my computer screen is even real? I have to assume that given everyone says it's real, I can kind of logically conclude that it's probably real.
No, I think the problem of induction is insurmountable, and you have to go beyond naive realism. Naive realism says that, well, everyone says this reality is real, so it must be real. That's naive realism. It's the most impoverished philosophical
I wouldn't say
worldviews.
it makes it real. I would say that it's reasonable to conclude it's real.
I disagree, but anyway, I went through hard solipsism as an atheist. I don't know if you're aware of what that is.
Nope.
Okay. Hard solipsism says only I am. So
I think therefore I am.
Well, I think therefore I am. Yeah, that's
like
Descartes.
Only I am, and I can't prove anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. So Descartes was influential. One of the main turning points in my conversion was René Descartes. I think therefore I am. But this idea of I am does not include. You see on your screen, you can see my fingers moving, and you can see my head, and my shoulders. Okay. I did not believe in my physical body. It's a disembodied I am. Okay. And because, to believe in my own body is begging the question. It's assuming that my sense perceptions correspond with some sort of reality in an attempt to prove that my sense perceptions correspond to some sense of reality. So if you read Descartes and the problem of solipsism and how he resolves the problem, you may not be satisfied with the way he resolves the problem. And I don't know if you've read, have you read Descartes yet?
Nope.
Okay. If you read Meditations on First Philosophy, it's fascinating and it's interesting. If you're interested in natural science, it will be of interest. If you're interested in philosophy, it will be of interest. And if you're interested in monotheism, it will be of interest. Now, he was no saint, he was no Orthodox Catholic, but he had a grounding in the faith, and he strayed from the faith in terms of what he believed. But he had enough of that Catholic philosophy running through his veins, just sort of by default. Anyone at that time would. Okay, even if you're the biggest enemy, even Voltaire had Catholicism coursing through his veins. I mean, his book Candide was dedicated to the Pope at the time. and he
Yep.
had a certain respect for certain people in the church and certain ideas in the church. And I don't think you can really honestly look at the history of the church with its education, with healthcare, with everything that's contributed to natural sciences and everything, and seriously in your heart of hearts not give it what it's due in terms of credit, right? So, but all of this to say that there's a sort of default Catholicism that dominated the Middle Ages, even the late Middle Ages. I think the high point was the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries. That to me is the golden age of Catholicism in terms of philosophy, with people like Anselm. I don't know if you know, if you've read the Ontological
I've heard of
Argument.
him. Oh, the Ontological Argument. Yeah, it's BS, in my opinion.
I'd love to talk about that with you.
Which one was that?
That
Oh,
than
geez,
which
I
nothing.
didn't finish my note there.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll put a pin in this. We'll come back to Anselm. That than which nothing greater can be conceived. That is.
Oh, it's this one.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm maximally being would exist in every possible universe kind of thing.
I've never heard it phrased that way, but we'll discuss it. Did we go off tangent?
A little bit. So I guess I was just asking specifically what kind of turned you back to Christianity, and this time it was Roman Catholicism instead of Protestant.
It was the problem of induction that led me to hard solipsism. Okay, I applied radical doubt to my atheistic Satanism. I doubted everything that can be doubted, and that includes
As you should.
That includes my alleged sense perceptions and these sense organs and everything that goes along with that. And then I, in the course of reading, I actually remember the exact moment where I converted back to God. I was in the middle of reading Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy.
Right. So I guess I'm just asking, so there are a few different steps to go from atheism to Roman Catholicism. First, you have to go from atheism to theism.
Yeah.
Then from theism to the Christian God. Then from the Christian God to specifically the Roman Catholic denomination.
Okay, I can talk about that if you want. Yeah.
So I guess my main question here is, I think it is reasonable to, unless evidence is presented, to default to the position of no God existing. And I am yet to hear from anyone any sufficient evidence for a God to exist. So I default to atheism.
Yeah. Can you in any way relate to the headspace, which is an ironic term because I didn't have a head, but when I was a hard solipsist, I just believed that I was disembodied spirit, and that this fantasy of the external world and the other, including my mother, is just that, a fantasy and an illusion of my own creation, because there is no one else to create this illusion. It is just from myself, right? Because the principle of sufficient reason, I wasn't aware of this at the time. The PSR was not on my radar at that time, but the PSR says everything has its being either from itself or from another. So as a hard solipsist, I believed that everything I was a source of everything, and everything comes from me, and I always was and always will be, and that I am infinite in every perfection, but I've just really done a really good job of fooling myself into thinking that I'm this dweeby loser in Canada.
So I can relate to an extent. I mean, I've thought of this for a long time, maybe since I was like 10. I've thought basically it is theoretically possible that everything I see is just me being absolutely insane and I'm in a mental ward. But I'm not convinced that it even matters.
Well, you're going to a soft solipsism, and that's really toxic, because you're assuming that there's a mental institution in the first place for you to inhabit, and that you have a head, a torso, and 4 limbs.
So what I mean is, even if, right, this whole place was just kind of like even if everything I see and experience is just all a construct of my mind, whatever my mind may be, it doesn't matter, because that is what I'm experiencing. And so unless I can find a way to change it or, quote unquote, break out, this is just how I'm living. And unless I can kind of make the argument that if I question it enough, I'll see the real world, then it doesn't matter, because what I'm seeing is real to me.
Yeah, when I believed that I was the only being, it was not just a pleasant little thought experiment. It was an overwhelming existential angst. Like, I am. It's like so incredibly powerful. You have not stared obviously into the abyss that I stared into as a hard solipsist. You've toyed with the idea of hard solipsism, as anyone who's watched The Matrix probably has. But you know, to it's one thing to, it's like they say about the pig who ate an egg sandwich, an egg sandwich versus a ham sandwich. The ham sandwich is complete commitment, but you know, to make the full commitment to hard solipsism, and this is just by the sincere application of radical doubt to my worldview. I didn't want to have existential angst, but I found myself in that position, and it wasn't a pleasant place to be. The loneliness of it, the blackness of it, the responsibility of it.
I think I have stared into the abyss. I just brought a flashlight because I've thought about this a lot, but I don't understand why it matters. Because even if, let's imagine, for example, that everything I see and experience is a construct of my mind,
yep.
I can't change that, right? It is that way anyway.
Well, you don't feel that your awareness is shifting and there's a feedback based on what you choose to meditate on. For example, if you never found yourself spiraling into pessimism or negative thoughts, and then
I definitely have
buoying yourself up by purposely and consciously turning your thoughts to edifying thoughts or positive thoughts or optimism, have you not seen the sort of feedback loops that you can get into consciously?
Yes, I would reject the idea that I did it I would reject the idea that I chose to do it because I don't believe in free will.
Right.
But you know,
but there's a feedback. There's a feedback that you've observed. So this is the thing about.
But even so, let's imagine that like I observed that feedback. I don't quite get how that relates to. I guess my question is, I don't understand how it is in any way relevant to what I experience, whether or not what I experience is fake. Because at the end of the day, this is what I'm experiencing. I can't change what I'm experiencing. So even if it was true, there's this philosophical idea that I've forgotten about. I don't know the name, but it's basically that like something is only true or even like worth considering if it has practical application. And I fail to see how hard solipsism has any practical application.
Well, it's a false worldview, but the thing is that the
Can you prove that?
Yeah, I can. I can prove it using deduction, pure deduction, without induction and without any faith. I can prove.
Okay, so imagine that. So if I'm the only being, right, and
yeah.
I'm, you know, everything is a construct of my mind, how can you prove that that's not the case?
Well, because if there's only one being, it's not you, it's me.
But see, okay, fine. Imagine, let's think of it like this. If you're the only being, how can you prove that's not the case?
Because let me put it to you this way. I've got a cute little thing here that I can actually pull up. Let me see if I can get this going right. Just bear with me for 1 second. I've got something here that is relevant. I wish I had it on the tip of my tongue, but I don't. So I'm going to pull it up on my channel. Solipsism. Okay. Can you hear what's playing? Either I'm God or God is God. So if God is not God, then I am God.
Are you live?
But I know that I am not God and that God is God, because this is, I'm playing, it's unfortunate you can't hear it, but the listeners could hear it. It's the little meditation I do, the proof that solipsism is false and monotheism is true. So basically the argument goes that either listen to my argument. Either I'm God or God is God, right? You agree with that so far?
Okay.
So if God is God, so if God is not God, then I am God. But I know that I am not God and that God is God, because if I am wrong, then I am also not wrong. So this is the reduction to absurdity test. So I'll start from the beginning here. Either I am God or God is God. So if God is not God, then I am God. But I know that I am not God and that God is God, because if I am wrong, then I am also not wrong. Since if I am wrong when I say that I am not God, then I am God, and God cannot be wrong. Therefore, I know that I am not wrong when I say that I am not God. Therefore, I am not God. But if I am not God, then God is God. Therefore, God is
But
God.
haven't you started with the assumption that God exists?
No,
Yes. Okay. So isn't it possible?
it's not an assumption. It's not an assumption. It's you need to understand what hard solipsism is. Hard solipsism is
Can you send this to me in like a text form so that I can read it?
Sure. Yeah.
Or like if it's not in text form, you can just like screenshot it and send it to me.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. And I'll send you the link to the meditation because it's kind of funny. Is there a chat feature right here on?
If you just bring up Discord, I guess you can send it to me on there.
Or I can send it to you right here on.
Oh, can you? Oh, that's awesome.
Are you able to see that on the screen?
Yes. Okay. So you said either you're God or God is God.
Right, but you need to understand where I'm coming from as a solipsist. I am.
Yeah.
Sole ipse, only I am.
So it's like either only you exist, or. See, but this is the problem. You said either I'm God or God is God. Right. Doesn't that not only presume the idea that God can exist, but that he does exist, or that a God exists? Because you're saying either I'm God or God is God. That seems to me a false dichotomy. Why can't no God? It's like what it seems to me is either I'm God or I'm not God.
No. What you need, the hidden key to this proof is that I know as a hard solipsist, I believe that I'm the source of my own existence, right? So
yes, okay. So
that is the definition. That is the definition of God, the self-existent being. That is the definition of God. So I'm coming.
Well, okay, so
I'm coming at the place.
That's how you define God, sure.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's the, and I would have met the definition of, I was aware of Anselm's ontological argument. I'd been thinking about it as an atheist for 8 years, every day thinking about it. I didn't like it. I didn't believe it. I didn't think it was sound or valid as an argument, but I was obsessed with it. And it was like a little koan, like these Zen mind puzzles that sort of elevate the mind beyond itself, right? Mm-hmm. So I was chewing on that, and I was aware of the ontological argument, but I was living it as a hard solipsist. I'm really sweating here, sorry.
It's fine.
I was living it as a hard solipsist, and I understood palpably what it is to be, to have being, to have eternal being. Like there's no beginning and there's no end. And I felt the full force of the weight of that, and the isolation and the loneliness of God, not the real God, but the fake God, David Ross, like the fake God that I was. I was giving myself this godhood that didn't belong to me, and that is a horrible place to be. But I just want to reassure you and the listeners that the true God is not lonely. He's not crushed by the weight of his responsibilities or the absurdity of it. I was crushed by all of that. But the key to understanding my proof, and I don't expect anyone to take this seriously or really to benefit from it, but it's just an exercise in entering into the mind of that one hard solipsist, and to confront, because I think it is therapeutic to confront the idea of being itself. I am, and no one can deny, subjectively speaking. Like, I mean, I can deny your existence, you can deny mine, but you cannot deny your own existence, and I cannot deny my own existence. If you try it, you will be affirming your existence by the very act of denying it. And this is the genius of Descartes.
So this is, reading this again, so did you say something like God is simply defined as a self-existent being, like the being that created itself?
The source of his own existence, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you know that there is a being with such a source? That seems like an assumption to me that can't be logically grounded.
Well, I doubted everything that I could possibly doubt, and I was still left with the fact that I am.
Okay, but right? What if, consider the following. What if the universe is real, right?
I believe it is.
And great, I'm glad. So do I. What if I am real, and everything is real. And so there is no necessary self-existent being. Or maybe you could just say the universe is in and of itself the self-existent being.
Yeah, this is the naive realism that I hate so much, because you have not yet doubted to the extent that you actually firmly believe that I am is the only truth, right?
But it doesn't matter, because if
Right.
I am that, if I am the only truth,
Yeah.
what's real, all that matters is what is real to me.
Yeah.
Right? My perception. And given that my perception leads me to the universe being real, in a kind of more subjective sense, the universe is real.
Are you saying that as a hard solipsist, the subjective experiences are just as real as they are
Well,
for
my
you
point
now?
is that nothing can be, I don't really know how to put this. Nothing can be real other than what you experience, right? Like, there is no way to ground anything unless you assume some level of reliability in your own experience. And if you're gonna start doubting things like your own experience, right? If that takes you back to hard solipsism, well, then you just say, well, okay, then I've created this universe and I'm living in it. So this, if I've created this universe as a construct of my mind, then this universe is real to me. And if you really want to doubt, you just go back to the point, well, where, how do I prove that the, law of non-contradiction isn't real? Like, if you actually go full blown hard solipsism, you cannot get anywhere with anything.
Yeah. I should
Full
point out, by the way, that the laws of thought were not subject to doubt, and the obviously deduction was not subject to doubt. They were involved in my journey to and from hard solipsism. So it's important to note. But in terms of tangible realities, the only tangible reality I had in terms of being, a conscious being, is the undeniable fact that I am. And maybe the way of coming at this less rigorously and more intuitively would just be to say that I was struck in that mode of hard solipsism where I sincerely believed I was the only being. I was struck by the reality. It's like I could see in my mind's eye, if you want to use that word, the eternity of I am, the fact that there must necessarily be a necessary being, one and only one necessary being. I was struck by that.
Okay,
So I want to emphasize with you this idea of the contrast between apprehension and comprehension. So it was a miserable, dark phase in my life, but it bore fruit, luckily, and I'm happy to have gone through it. But it was an existential angst. But in that darkest moment, there was an apprehension, meaning that in that groping in that dark spiritual existential place, I was confronted with the reality that there is a being whose essence is existence and who does not depend, he's not contingent, he does not depend for his existence on the existence of anything else. I was struck by that. I apprehended that. It doesn't mean that I comprehended it in that darkest moment. So I think it's important psychologically to sort of get into that headspace where you are bumping up against hard truths without comprehending them, but you're apprehending them in a very, very real way because you've got nothing else. You've literally got nothing else. You can't run to mama because your mama doesn't exist. You can't go look in the mirror because that's just more illusion. And so there's a certain nakedness that you have as a genuine hard solipsist, where you can face the reality, you can apprehend this shocking reality that there is necessarily one and only one necessary being, and that it turns out is God.
You use the word being. So you're just saying that there is a thing that must exist that is not caused but can cause, right?
Yeah, well, in that
kind of the prime mover idea.
In that existential angst, my journey into and through hard solipsism, I was that God, for lack of a better word. I made myself
but
God.
Then you concluded. So in this argument though that you've presented, are you defining God as just a being that can cause without being caused? Like,
well,
there's so many different interpretations of the word God
right,
alone.
right. But just I don't want you to sort of quickly brush over the fact, the context. Think about me. I'm a human being, like a physical human being who was going through a sort of psychosis here, where I'm confronting this existential angst of being the only being. Now, it's very important that you understand that I am a human being. I have personality, I have will, I have reason.
No, you don't.
I didn't say free will. I did not say free will.
Okay.
I said I have will and I have reason. And there are many philosophical proofs, by the way, that hinge on the will of the human without needing to emphasize the free will of the human being. We can talk about that in the context of Blessed John Duns Scotus. He has a wonderful proof, I think, an a posteriori proof, a deductive proof of the existence of God, and it relies
Which
on
one?
It's his one and only. It's his one and only. It's called the Modal Argument. I don't know if you've read it.
This is new. The Modal Argument.
John Duns Scotus, Modal Proof. Definitely should look into it.
Yep. Yeah.
It's an a posteriori proof. It deals with the manifest reality that we see. You can choose any example you want. Okay, you can take anything you want. Your pet dog, start from there. You want to use your cup of coffee that you're holding on to, you can start from there. You can start from any manifest reality. Obviously, you can't be a hard solipsist. It's not going to work. You need to get out of hard solipsism. I want to just briefly tell you how I got from sort of generic monotheist to Catholic, okay? Just very, very briefly, so that I don't neglect to answer your question, even though, I'm not like wanting to talk about myself, but you did ask, and I think it's important that I tell you the journey, because it might be interesting in the future when you think about your own journey and how your journey is unfolding, okay? So I went from hard solipsist to a generic monotheist, thanks in large part to René Descartes. From there, I said, well, I hate Christianity, so I can't be a Christian. I'm not Jewish, so I can't be Jewish. You can't just join Judaism. That was my sort of general hunch, even though people do convert to Judaism, but I think no one really takes them that seriously when you convert to Judaism. So I said, I am a Muslim, because there are only 3 monotheistic religions that dominate this world. There may be other little crazy ones, but it's basically Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So I said, okay, well, I'm a de facto Muslim, even though I don't believe any of the tenets of Islam. For example, I don't believe that Muhammad is the last and greatest prophet. I don't believe in the Quran. But I have an impulse which is bigger than I am, which is urging me, like as my top priority in life, now that I'm a generic monotheist, my top priority, what is it? Just like the man in the desert
To
wants
find
water.
a monotheist?
No, I wasn't at that point. I'm a monotheist, but the desire.
I mean, you need to like find a religion.
I need to publicly worship God. This is the drive. This is the impulse.
Why?
Okay, and so I said, okay, I'm a Muslim. I'm gonna it's gonna be awkward telling my family because they're Christian or whatever, but I'm gonna have to tell them I'm a Muslim and go find a mosque and I guess find out about Muhammad. And I didn't have a good impression of Muhammad anyway, but I kind of liked Zakir Naik. I don't know if you know Zakir Naik. He's a televangelist for Islam.
Oh, I know this guy. I don't like him.
You don't like him? Okay, I liked him. But anyway, he may have changed over the years. Bear in mind, this is 11, 12 years ago, right? So anyway, I just said, okay, well, it's Islam for now, tentatively. And then I was just going about my business, not terribly excited to be sort of a bad Muslim, because I didn't really believe anything, but I just wanted to worship God. So it just so happens that at my workplace, randomly, if you believe in randomness, a Catholic monk walked in. So I said, hey, I just discovered that I believe in your God. I want to worship your God. Like, how can I worship God? He said, well, just come to the monastery and we'll talk about it. So I said, well, I don't have a car. Where's this monastery? He said, it's right across the street. So I'd never noticed this monastery. I walked across the street, went to the monastery, and he gave me instruction for like 6 months, 8 months. And I just told him, I said, look, when we first met, I said, he showed me the Catholic Mass, and I said, I want to worship God with the Catholic Mass. I don't know what's going on here. I have no idea what's going on. I just have this impulse to worship God. And so I'd like to become Catholic. Is it okay that I don't believe in the Trinity or in Jesus Christ, the incarnation, the redemption, the crucifixion, the death, resurrection? Is it okay that I don't believe in any of that stuff? He said, sure. Well, we're going to sort of go step by step, and I'm going to teach you over the next several months. And if you accept the teachings, then you will become a Christian. And if you don't, then you won't. It's that easy, you know?
Okay.
So I said, okay, well, I'm open-minded. Give me some books to read. So I read the Catechism. I read different books. I was already familiar with, in a sort of, as an enemy of the church through my history of Western philosophy. I was sort of familiar with Catholicism anyway, but now that I believed in God and I had a completely different sort of perspective on God, it gave me a different perspective on religion, and I eventually dropped my bias against Christ and his church, and I accepted all the teachings, always putting the truth as my top priority and ready to abandon Jesus Christ, like I said to you at the beginning of this, always ready to reject Jesus Christ at the drop of a hat if that's what's true. If he's a false prophet. So I just used my God-given reason to examine the teachings as they were presented to me. And there are many things, of course, that go beyond reason, but nothing that contradicted reason. That's a big distinction that needs to be made by any monotheist who's examining which of the monotheistic faiths that he wants to join. So in retrospect, I can say that I am a monotheist because of pure reason and philosophy. I am a Christian because of history. If you look at the history of the monotheistic religions, history leads you to, once you're a believer in God, history will lead you to Jesus Christ. And then once you're a Christian, the question of authority will lead you to Catholicism. And so it's a sort of a three-step thing like that. Of course, you as an atheist are not ready to accept that.
I do want to focus actually, just quickly, what history are you talking about? Because there is not too much significant evidence to even suggest Jesus existed.
Well, I disagree. I mean, I look at even if you take the sort of creeds of the different religions, the different monotheistic religions, if you take the creed of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they all talk about the Messiah, okay? And if you examine historically the story they tell,
it's
never mind.
Demonstrably proven that Jesus basically lied in an attempt to make people think he was the Messiah.
Demonstrably proven? I disagree.
I think it can be demonstrably proven. Okay, so Jesus claimed, I assume that your belief is that Jesus said he was born of a virgin, right?
Yes.
Yes. So why do you think he would say that? Because to me, imagine for a second that he was the Messiah, right? He didn't need to be born of a virgin. That was a mistranslation into the language he spoke. It just said in the original kind of Old Testament verses that it would be born of a young woman. They mistranslated that into a virgin.
I disagree.
And then
I disagree.
That's true.
No. That's one school of thought, and that's
that is if you read the original.
If you're telling me that is not contested amongst Old Testament scholars, you're completely mistaken. You've been sold a bill of goods if you believe that. You need to go and look at the competing voices in biblical academia. It's not unanimous. You're deluded if you think it's unanimous. You're deluded if you think anything is. If you think that anything is unanimously accepted by the scholars, you're completely deluded.
Okay, let me ask you this: If Jesus was God, why would he pick a method of transmission to tell everyone that can be so easily misinterpreted? Because if there is debate among scholars, that implies that there is some way to interpret it differently. Correct? Why would he pick a method? By the way, this isn't even to mention the fact that the books of, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John weren't written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were written by second or third hand accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
You know, we could talk till the cows come home about all the different pet theories of your favorite theologians and scholars.
Most New Testament scholars, even the Christian ones, accept the idea that the earliest book was written 20 or 30 years after Jesus' death. Yeah,
well, I mean, you're talking about the dating of the. You don't think Mark was written by Mark and Matthew was written by Matthew and John was written by John?
In fact, I don't have the exact verses on me, but several of the books. So first of all, I know several of the books directly quote, I think it's like Luke has verses that literally are just copy pasted from Mark.
Yeah. This I don't know what you've been reading, but this is coming out of vogue now. This is like passé now, what you're talking about. You're regurgitating something from like that was popular 15, 20 years ago. This is outmoded. This whole historical criticism that you're talking about, it's completely outmoded now. It's like you need to get up with the times with the recent scholarly research, because that's completely outmoded. And all of the faithful Catholic scholars today are completely abandoning that historical criticism. They're going to new methods, and they're taking what was good from historical criticism. I mean, there was historical criticism going on in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries. If you go back and actually read...
Can I just ask, do you think that the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were written at the time by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
It's not a dogmatic teaching of the church. We're free to debate that.
I'm asking what you believe.
I mean, I'm not a scholar, so I don't know. I prefer to believe that.
I can tell you that the scholarly consensus is that they are the work of unknown Christians. After it was passed on by word of mouth, composed from 68 to 110 AD.
Yeah, well, that may be
30 years after Jesus' death.
That may well be the popular opinion, but so is evolution. I mean,
and evolution is true.
Most Catholics today, including possibly the 6 most recent popes, have possibly, I hope not, but possibly have believed that Jesus Christ and Mary evolved from apes, right? And that they were apes.
If you want to know, I can tell you the official position of the Roman Catholic Church is that evolution happened.
No, it's not. It's not. That's not the official position. It's not by a long shot. The overwhelming weight of the magisterial weight of the documents on the side of creation, special creation, far outweigh any sort of offhand personal opinions of the 6 most recent popes and speeches that are given by speechwriters at the Scientific Academy and these sorts of things. You need to examine the magisterial weight on the one side of the issue versus the handful of personal opinions and offhand comments of these men.
What evidence do you have that Genesis actually happened?
Well, I'm taught by my religion. This is the thing you need to understand, is that I'm not putting natural science above philosophy, much less above theology, much less above God Almighty. So I have a hierarchy in the sciences that I submit to and that I keep in the proper order. God is science with a capital S. Beneath him, we have theology. Beneath theology, we have philosophy. And beneath philosophy, we have the natural sciences. Beneath the natural sciences are all kinds of other soft sciences, okay? So I will never, ever, ever put the hard evidence, so-called evidence. Evidence is evidence. But listen, evidence needs to be interpreted, right? So, I mean, if you show me a fossil and we go, let's go hiking in the desert of Australia, and we dig, for some reason, we dig into the sand and we find a bone of an animal, and I don't think that I have a good reason to think someone just planted it there, so I think it's naturally occurring, and we can both speculate about what it means, and we can have interpretations.
Right, but if we radiocarbon date the bone, we can tell how old it is.
If you're naive enough to believe in the circular reasoning of carbon dating, which is based
if I'm naive enough to believe in the thousands of scientists who have spent 10 plus years learning about this stuff,
well, they're committed to a worldview. They're committed to a worldview. This is what you don't understand, right? It's just
so are you trying? Okay, so I'll ask you this. So you believe that the world is what, somewhere between 6,000 to 10,000 years old, correct? Because I have what I would consider to be
8 to 10.
Okay, great, 8 to 10,000. So we have so we can observe ice layers being put down in Antarctica.
Lots of interpretation already. You're assuming a lot already. No,
this is a fact. We can observe them being laid down.
No, correct? No, you don't know the thing. Just
the ones that we've seen. We can watch them happen. That is true.
Okay, we can watch something today happening, right?
Right. So then
we can roll back time.
You know where I'm going with this.
We can roll back time.
Where I'm going with this.
No, but we can roll back time with a uniformitarian assumption.
Yes, because if you don't, you get nowhere.
No, if you don't, you get back to the creation
Right, so I can just say
providence
that
framework.
this whole universe and including this conversation was created 5 seconds ago if I reject uniformitarianism.
Last Thursdayism, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what your religion teaches you?
Unless you assume that the laws of nature are always the same and always have been, you can basically propose any hypothesis about the past and have it be equally likely.
Right, but
including the idea that magical pixies created the universe 2 minutes ago.
Right, but remember I talked about the logical progression from hard solipsism to monotheism, from monotheism to Christianity, from Christianity to Catholicism. If you want to go back to the uncaused first cause and say that it's a pink fairy, or if you want to say it's a spaghetti monster or whatever, you're going to lose that argument, because either the spaghetti monster is identical with the uncaused first cause, in which case it's just another name for God, or it's not identical, in which case it's lacking some of the perfections that the uncaused first cause had, therefore it's not God. So this is the thing.
How do you prove the uncaused first cause is God, is like actually perfect?
Because it's the source of everything, right? It's
that doesn't make it perfect.
The principle of proportionate causality. You cannot give what you do not have.
No idea how big the universe is in compared to what it could be, right?
It's a dogma of the church. It is a dogma of the church. Take that for what it is. It's a dogma of the church that God created a good world, but it's not the best world. God could have created a better world. So it really is arbitrary. The size, the complexity, the beauty. That's all arbitrary, because it's neither perfect nor non-existent. It's somewhere in between. It has an ontological goodness, but it's not the best world. God could have made a better world, but it is ontologically good. So that whole question of how many multiverses are there and how many...
I didn't bring up multiverses.
I know, but they're questions that the atheists bring up about the possibilities and how complex the universe is and quantum physics, all this stuff. It's all red herrings to distract from the undeniable fact that there is one and only one uncaused first cause, and that we can know the attributes, many of the attributes of this uncaused first cause.
Are you talking about the Kalam cosmological argument here?
I'm not familiar with the Kalam.
Okay, so the Kalam basically goes like this: everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And then from there, they try and it doesn't actually. I'll explain why in a second. But then from there you go like, well, it must be spaceless and timeless because it exists outside space and time, because it chose to create something. It must be personal, and that's how they try and derive stuff like that. The problem that I have with it is it assumes. Okay, so let's think about this, right? Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Okay, that's absurd, because what has ever began to exist? Everything. So for example, you, right? When you learn something new, synapses in your brain change. Did you begin to exist again? Or did you just change what was already there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything is just a changed state of the universe which was already there. And if you go back far enough, assuming, let's take God out of the equation and, assume Big Bang and evolution.
Yeah.
If you go back far enough, you just have the universe, which is to say the entire list of things that has began to exist is the universe. So the premise that everything that begins to exist has a cause, literally restated, is the universe has a cause.
Yes.
That's the definition of begging the question? I'm not sure. But
assuming
it's circular reasoning, right? Yeah.
Well,
so you're assuming.
But let's do the reduction to absurdity test. So either the universe is caused or it's not caused. If it's not caused, it's uncaused. Okay. So let's assume. I think it's more reasonable to say that the universe is caused, but let's assume, for the sake of argument, that it's not caused. What does that mean?
It means nothing.
There are implications to that. For example, are you willing to throw out some of the most fundamental laws of the natural sciences, the laws of thermodynamics? All three laws of thermodynamics are in jeopardy. If you want to say that this universe has no beginning, all three are in jeopardy.
My understanding of the laws of thermodynamics is that they describe what already exists. They don't say anything about what exists outside of the universe. I mean, if you're trying to tell me that If you're trying
correct.
to tell me that God exists, does that also not violate the laws of thermodynamics?
I'm playing into your fantasy where the universe is uncaused. All there is the material universe, and it had the potential to become what it is today. Obviously, it had the potential, and it's actualized into today, and today will actualize into tomorrow, and tomorrow will actualize into the next day. Okay, so if we go back to, like you said, if we go back in time, and you want to say that it is uncreated, then what you're saying is that we have to throw out the laws of thermodynamics, because the laws of thermodynamics say, number one, there's a fixed amount of energy.
But we throw out laws all the time.
Okay, so you're willing to throw them out?
No, I'm willing to reinterpret. I mean, okay, so let's think about it like this, right? Newtonian physics. It literally is incomplete.
No, we did not throw out.
No, we didn't. But we reinterpreted it and used it at different times because we understand that laws of Newtonian physics break down once you enter the quantum realm. In the same way, we can say thermodynamics only applies inside the universe and not outside of it.
You don't understand. You didn't study physics and quantum physics and Newtonian mechanics at university the way I did. I know you haven't because you're too young to have studied. I studied Newtonian mechanics and quantum mechanics at university. I've worked at the Canadian Space Agency. I've worked in quantum physics, and I have my name on a published paper in quantum electronics. Okay, so I know what I'm talking about, and I can tell you. Listen to me. I can tell you that in our first year quantum mechanics course, okay, which is in second year, we were walked through as an educational sort of mind-opening experience for the students. During just one lecture, we were walked through, just to expand our minds and to understand the history of science. We were walked through two demonstrations. One was the application of Newtonian wave mechanics to a subatomic quantum context, and the opposite, a quantum mechanics approach, Schrodinger wave equation applied to a macro object, a baseball thrown at 100 miles per hour. Okay, so when you talk about the breakdown of Newtonian physics, what you need to understand by the breakdown is the clumsiness, the awkwardness, the incredible cumbersomeness of using Newtonian mechanics at the small scale. It's ridiculous, it's absurd, and it was blackboard after blackboard of Newtonian equations. And the same thing when we applied the Schrodinger equation. Well, the Schrodinger equation applied to a macro object was not as long, but it was absurd for another reason. It was absurd for the reason that we would never, ever in a laboratory be able to detect such a small wavelength and an amplitude of the wave of baseball being thrown at 100 miles per hour, because it's just too bulky and big to be observable. Okay, but my point here is that when you talk about the breakdown of classical Newtonian mechanics, you completely have misconstrued it. It's not a breakdown meaning that it's not true. It's a breakdown meaning it's inappropriate. It's not apt. It's not applicable in the sense that it's just unworkable. So I think you and my listeners, I hope you understand that there's a lot There's a lot of misinformation going around by people that want to sell books. Just like Krauss wants to sell books, and he'll say that
I think Lawrence Krauss is pretty qualified in the area.
A quantum field is, quote unquote, nothing. A quantum field is not nothing. And if you actually read his book, you'll see that he admits that a quantum field is not nothing. So when he wants to have his cake and eat it too. The concept of
nothing is ridiculous to begin with.
I think so, because I believe in an uncaused being, a being who is necessary. So I don't think I think it has a limited usefulness, this concept of nothing. But that's beside the point. My point is that there's a lot of pseudoscience going around. There's a lot of people trying to sell books with bad philosophy that they attach to their credentials as a natural scientist. I think natural science is good.
So let's okay. So if I were to concede the idea that the universe had a cause, that doesn't make it God. But not at all. We have no idea what was before the universe.
It's a cause. The universe is a fancy word for everything that is. Okay, so everything natural that is. So if you want to say that everything that is taken together has a cause, what do you suppose is more likely, that cause is is powerful or not powerful, that it's
Power implies
it's
personage.
it's the source of everything. No, power just means the ability to take something from actuality to potentiality. That's it. Sorry, from potentiality to actuality.
If we specifically define power as basically like ability and not necessarily implying, personage, then yes, it would be powerful relative to the universe.
Yeah, and it's anyway.
But also, we can't necessarily demonstrate that the laws of the universe would apply outside of the universe. So I don't maybe it's not. Maybe it's like super counterintuitive.
I can guarantee you, it's a dogma of the church that the laws of nature do not apply outside of nature. That's not only a dogma of the church; it's common sense. There can be no laws of nature outside of nature. There can be no time outside of time.
Why does it necessitate that it's powerful?
Well, because it's
the laws of nature don't apply.
Well, it's power because it is the source of everything. It took.
But you just said that the laws of nature don't apply.
Yeah, they do not apply. It's not a natural it's not a natural cause,
so
right?
Why do we need to assume that something would need to be powerful to create something massive?
Because the leap from nothing to something is infinite, so that requires infinite power.
I'm not sure I agree. The leap from nothing to something is however much that something is. I mean, the leap from 0 to 1 is 1, not infinite.
What is 1 divided by 0?
Right, but we're not talking about like how many times does 0 go into 1. We're talking about how much more do you need to add from 0 to get 1? They're completely different questions.
Well, you can add it if you have it, right? You can't add it if you don't have it. I'd like you to produce 1 grain of sand for me. Go for it. You yourself.
I'd like you to produce a god.
You yourself admitted that you cannot produce anything. You can only move things around. You admitted that. You said the only thing that was created is the universe, right? And I agree with you. I agree with you. There's only one creation. And since then, things are just shifting around and evolving in the proper sense of the word, meaning changing according to their natures, right? So you can't obviously you can't get a higher nature from a lower nature. Like when you picture the cold dead universe 14 billion years ago, according to your worldview, it had the potential, according to you, to bring about rational and I would say free creatures like the human beings and or even
do you want to go back to free will actually? Yeah, because I do think that I can demonstrate that free will doesn't exist.
Sure.
Okay, so here's my argument. Basically, all actions either have a grounding in what I would call like a want, like a desire, right? Or they don't. So like either you do something to attain a goal or you don't. Right? Now, if you do something to attain a goal, you don't decide what the goal is. The goal is already decided. Like if I go and eat ice cream, I don't decide to enjoy ice cream. I just, hey man, like ice cream's delicious, right? Versus if I did it completely randomly, well, that's not really free will either. So it doesn't matter which path I'm taking. I never chose my decision.
Yeah. Have you ever decided not to decide something? Or have you ever? Sure.
Okay, yeah, so let's imagine, for example.
Have you ever decided to decide something?
No. And I'll explain why. So like, let's imagine that I wanted the ice cream, but I was on a diet, right? So I decided to not eat the ice cream.
Yep.
But why did I decide to not eat the ice cream? Well, because I wanted to stay healthy. My decision there is still ultimately based on something like a want, right? Why do I want to stay healthy? Well, because society has put expectations on me and I want a long life. Neither of those are things that I can control.
Right. But if you say, for example, let's say your family wants to go on holiday, okay? And traditionally you go to one of 3 places, blah, blah. I'm just making this up. So it's your turn. The family says, okay, Alex, it's your turn this year. You get to decide, but we're going to give you lots of time. You've got until the summer to decide. Just come up with your decision. Whatever you decide, we'll go there. So you know that you have choice to make. You know that there's no real pressure on you in terms of what you choose, and you know there's no real pressure in terms of when you choose it. You also know that some times are more convenient than others. For example, if like you're in the middle of an exam at school, that's probably not the best time to like start deciding where you're going to go for holiday, right? So, and you also know that there are times that are very amenable to making a decision like that. Like, for example, when you're at you're talking to your friend who happens to be a travel agent, and she's been all over the world and she has lots of good suggestions for you, and you say to yourself, well, this might be a good opportunity for me to bring up the question about where I could bring my family for holiday. And so you just sort of work it into the conversation without being rude and selfish. You work it into the conversation, right? So there are lots of little small decisions that go into when not to decide and when to decide.
Why would I work it into the conversation without seeming rude or selfish? Well, it's because I want them to like me, for example. And I've spoken to this person specifically because I know that they will give me a good spot to go. You said that they're some kind of like travel agent, right? Yeah. Which means that, well, why am I talking to them? Because I want to have a good holiday. These all come down to wants that I can't control.
No. You're not talking to her because you can use her to get something from her. You're talking to her because you love her, you like her, she's your friend, and you're talking about other stuff. It just so happens that you know that there's an opportunity.
Her, like, for example, I'm sure I've spoken to a million people before I started talking to her. Why wouldn't I bring this up to someone else?
You could.
Right? Why am I actually bringing it up to her? Well, okay, I bring it up to someone else. Why do I do that? Because I think that they have good opinion on it. Why? Like, would I bring it up to someone who I think has no input in this situation?
Have you ever found yourself? Okay, let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself talking, and then you're like, why am I talking to this person about this? Like, this is inappropriate. You know, like, did I just say that out loud? Like, what am I doing? You know, have you ever found yourself in that situation? I have. Okay, and so there's this sort of background mode that we're in where we have things on our mind. Like, I've got things on my mind. I've got some issue here in my place.
Sure, but I guess I would say, like, unless you consciously actively decided to talk to this person about it, like if it kind of happened randomly by accident, I wouldn't really say that counts as a choice anyway. Like, did you have free will to bring this up to them by accident? That's absurd.
Yeah, that's a good point. But
sorry, can I just go to the bathroom because I've been drinking a lot of water?
Yeah, go for it. I'll talk amongst myself.
Thank you.
So we are going to wrap it up here. I've got I've got a 1 hour 17 minutes already on the clock here. I'm going to probably wrap it up as pretty shortly when Alex comes back from his little bathroom break. So so far, pretty interesting chat with this nice young man. Obviously, I disagree with him about free will. Obviously, I disagree with him about entropy and the laws of thermodynamics, about the universe having no cause. And if it does have a cause, I think it's obvious that that cause has got some attributes that involve pure perfections that it's better to have than to not to have. When he comes back, I think I'll ask him about the ontological argument and so on. Just got to touch briefly on a couple of things.
Hey.
That was quick.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to make it quick.
I was talking to my listeners and, basically talking to myself, and I thought, you know, we can come back to this. I don't think we're making a lot of headway where we're spinning our wheels right now, but I was thinking about Selman, his ontological argument. I'd like to hear your sort of analysis of that.
This is the thing. I forgot to write it down, so I don't have the kind of refutation on hand.
Yeah, just talk about it.
Well, okay, so let's bring it. So how do you pronounce it? So is it just a regular ontological argument, or is it a particular version?
I don't know. I mean, it's
spell Anselm?
Anselm. Anslem. And
okay, Anselm.
Ontological argument.
Top result. There we go. Let's see if I can find it. So it's deductive, right? Or it's something like that.
Yeah.
God, where is it? Okay, so it says Anselm began with the concept of God as that than which nothing greater can be conceived.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so like, do you think he has infinite power?
Yes.
Okay, so can he create a burrito so hot he can't eat it?
No, because that's a lack of power to not be able to eat.
Okay, so that means that he doesn't have infinite power.
No, it's a lack of power. Like, It's I mean, eating is kind of a weird example because God took on our human nature.
Yeah, okay,
and
so let's do the classical one, like rock he can't lift type deal.
yeah, that's a lack of power to not be able to lift. It's not a power; it's a lack of power.
Right. So he's
He
created
can't-
the rock
He
and he
can't
can lift
have
it.
he can't have a lack of power.
Right. So here's the problem though, right? So he's created a rock and he's lifted it, right?
Yeah.
But the presumption was, can he create a rock so heavy he can't lift it? And if he can't create the rock,
Oh, he
then
can create a rock that no one can lift except himself.
including him?
No. He can't. It is
So
not a
it could be
perfection. It is
mine-
not a perfection to be weak. It's not a perfection to be weak. It's not a strength
But
to be weak.
This is my point. You can say that like he has certain limitations,
He
but
doesn't have any limitations.
okay, so can he create a rock so heavy that he can't lift it?
No, because that would be
That is a limitation.
No. That would the inability to lift something would be a limitation, and he doesn't have any limitations. So,
Right, so he's created the heaviest possible rock and he can lift it.
Yeah.
So he has not been able to create, he has
not
a
weak.
limited power in creating rocks.
He can't make himself weak. His own nature weak.
That's in and of itself limited power, correct?
No, it's not.
If he can't
It's not.
make himself.
No, it's not. It's the abundance of power that he can never be weak.
Okay, so if he has infinite power,
Yeah.
can he create a rock so heavy he can't lift it?
No, because
Because
not
if
being
he
able to
can't
lift is
create
not.
the
It's
rock,
not.
if he
not being
can't
able to-
create the rock,
He can
then-
create the rock, but he can lift it because to not be able to lift
but
it is a
then he
weakness.
hasn't created the specific rock.
Yeah, because that would be creating, if you want to use this word. I mean, it's absurd to say this, but it would be creating weakness, right? Because there's nothing he can't move. He's the unmoved mover. He can move anything and everything, just like the programmer can move the virtual objects in his virtual game world that he creates. And if he were unable to, if he were to create a virtual rock in his virtual video game, and he were unable to manipulate it using his code, that would be a weakness on his part, not a strength, right? So
Yes.
in this video game, you have to think about it like a video game. The programmer can create anything he wants, and he's in complete control of all of
Can
it.
the programmer create a rock that takes up, like, can the programmer create a rock with a virtual size so big that he can't move the rock in the game?
Of course
I think
not,
we
because that
can
would be a
both agree
weakness.
not. So that is not infinite power, and no one's saying that programmers have infinite
No,
power.
because it's not a limitation of his power. It's
But he
it's
can't
an example of his power.
Creation is a necessary part of power.
Like you
If
can
you're saying that he can't create something, that there's a certain thing he can't create, can we at least agree then that he does not have technically infinite power?
No, we can't say that because he has infinite power. Infinite means not finite. It means not bounded, not limited. And if he were to be limited, then he would by definition not be unlimited. Do you see? So it's a trick. The problem is with the grammar of saying, can he use his power to limit his power, right? Can he use his power to limit his power? No, he can't, because that would be a
Yes,
limit
that's
on his
the
power by
point.
definition. So getting back to logical positivism, everything is either a tautology or nonsense, and what you're saying is nonsense. And when I say God is infinite in his power, that's a tautology, because the very definition of what God is unlimited power.
Okay, I disagree, but we're just gonna have to move on.
We can move on, yeah. Because we're going to have
okay.
to wrap it up. So let's get through all the exciting bits that we haven't touched on yet.
So it then says,
Yeah.
are we talking? Do you want to go back to the
Yeah,
ontological argument?
I like Anselm's ontological.
Then it says, to think of such a being as existing only in thought and not also in reality involves a contradiction, since a being that lacks real existence is not a being than which none greater can be conceived.
Yeah, obviously.
That to me sounds truly absurd.
Well, which one is?
So it's
which one's
basically
greater?
saying-
Which one's greater? The one that is your fantasy or the one that's a reality? Which one's greater?
The one that is reality, I guess.
There you go. That's all he's saying. That's all
Right,
he's saying.
okay. So he's saying that in theory, a maximally great being would also exist in practice. But, okay, and then it says a yet greater being would be one with the further attribute of existence. Thus, the unsurpassably perfect being must exist. Otherwise, it would not be unsurpassably perfect.
Yeah.
This, to me, sounds truly absurd because it's saying that so it's saying so he has the concept of God, of which nothing greater can be conceived. That I don't understand how that gets you any closer to God's existence, because like I have the concept of Dumbledore, and that is like the most Dumbledorian thing that can exist.
Have you read?
But then,
yeah, go ahead. I can cut you off right now. Actually, it would be efficient to cut you off now because he sent his writing to a monk who rebutted or refuted Anselm's argument by saying, well, I can envision an island, it's the most perfect island, and therefore it must exist because the one that doesn't exist is not as perfect as the one that does exist.
yes,
Boom.
exactly.
Okay.
Boom.
And Anselm corrected his friend, the monk, and said, well, my argument only applies to God because God is immaterial. God is
That's
not
a special pleading fallacy.
God is not subject to change, and it's a category error. Like no one's saying, like, I mean, first of all, we can say with certainty that an island, even the best one that you can imagine, like, I mean, I don't even know what the criteria are for the best island, but I'm starting to picture women in bikinis, but it's subject to change, right? How can you even say that it is a pure perfection when it's subject to change?
I would actually argue that God is pretty imperfect to begin with. Like at least the God as described by the Bible is pretty imperfect.
Yeah, well, if you read the saints, the Catholic saints, this is my bias as a Catholic, obviously, but if you read the Catholic saints and how they interpret the anthropomorphic images in the Bible and for example, when God says he's angry, we know that God he's not subject to the passions. He doesn't get angry. It's just talking in human terms. There's a technical term for this attribution or condescension. Okay, the Christians have always understood this important,
it
very
has
important
nothing
distinction.
to do with God being actually angry. It has more to do with his moral commandments.
It has to do with
it has to do with Exodus 21, if you know what I'm talking about.
It has to do with karma, basically cause and effect. Like if you want to have life, then you need to love God, know God, and serve God in this life, and then you'll be happy with him forever. And if you don't,
right.
You know, it's the promises and the curses. The promises and the curses in the Old Testament.
Why would he punish people for no reason?
There's a good reason.
In this life, why would he punish them?
To correct them.
Okay, but that's
to bring them to repentance. Right? Like why does God allow evil?
I mean, why would God punish someone for no reason?
God would not do anything for no reason, that's for sure. God
allows people to do immoral things to people.
Yeah. Are you aware? Yeah, are you aware of the distinction in Christian theology and Catholic theology because God's will is always done, right? But are you aware of the distinction between his permissive will, that which he allows, and his ordaining or positive will, that which he ordains positively? Are you aware of that distinction?
No.
Okay, it's very important because everything that happens is God's will.
Mm-hmm.
But there are two categories of his will. It's his positive will or his permissive will. So why does God want
people to be slaves?
He allows evil. He's never the source or cause of evil, but he does allow evil, and it's always for the greatest good of each individual. Everything that happens is for your greatest good, for my greatest good, for everyone's individual greatest good, and for our collective greatest good.
Do you think that free will and suffering is better than no free will and no suffering?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Is there free will in heaven?
Yes.
Can I cause people to suffer in heaven?
No.
Then there is no free will in heaven.
There is free will in heaven. You just never choose to do ill.
That's called not free will.
No, you just don't choose that. Like right now, you could. I mean, it's no point in talking to someone that doesn't believe in free will. But if I were talking to someone that believed in free will, yeah, okay, for the sake of argument, if you believed in free will, like you know that I believe in free will, so
yes.
Let's use me as an example. Like I could eat dog excrement. Okay, I could.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the sidewalk. Like I could go out and pick it up and put it in my mouth, chew it.
Yeah, so could I do that in heaven?
No.
But so
And
then I don't have
thing,
the free will.
listen. I'm not complete. I haven't completed my thought yet. The thing here is that it would never occur to me to go out on the sidewalk, collect the dog doo-doo, and eat it. Okay, even though I'm free to do that, it's the same thing in heaven. It would never occur to me to hurt anyone in heaven.
Is literally restricting your thoughts.
No, am I restricted?
Okay,
am I restricted right now from
this thing? Right. So,
it's wisdom and knowledge and understanding that and prudence. The virtue of prudence.
Why wouldn't God create a world? I guess. Okay. So first of all, I don't understand how anyone can defend Exodus chapter 21 at all.
The 10 Commandments?
No, things like slavery, not very cool. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death, not very cool.
Well, I mean, do you remember when Moses permitted divorce? Do you remember that part? It's in the same chapters.
I remember the part where Moses permitted child rape.
Do you remember the part where he said an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth? Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Okay. So just think about divorce, never mind slavery and rape, okay? Let's think about an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, and divorce, okay? Because Jesus addresses those in the New Testament. Okay, you're not a Christian. There's no point talking about the Bible with you, but I just do it for the sake of the listeners, okay? So Jesus said, what does Moses teach about divorce? They said, well, he taught us that we give her a paper and we send her on her way. And Jesus said, well, that was because of the hardness of your hearts. That was a concession made to you by God, to you through Moses, okay? Same thing with eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He says, what did Jesus says, what did Moses teach you? He said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But what do I teach? I teach love your enemy.
Turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek. Right. Okay. So we don't have to, we can never forget that we have to.
So if I was Jesus, the first thing I would do when I came down would be like, hey, remember that slavery thing that everyone's been doing? Yeah, it turns out like you're all going to hell for that. Right? The only mention of slavery in the New Testament is, I believe it was Paul saying to obey your masters. To me...
No, that's not the only mention of slavery. Paul says in a very loving and moving way in one of the shortest, I think it's the shortest epistle in the New Testament. I think you should go and read it now, where he's talking to a slave owner and saying, look, I found your slave who ran away, and you owe me your very life, but instead of repaying me, Paul, I want you to repay your slave. I'm sending him back to you, and I want you to love him. I want you to be like a brother to him. I want you to care for him. I want you to feed him. I want you to treat him like a brother.
Do you think that it is in any way ever moral to own another person's property, regardless of how you treat them?
No, of course not. Of course not.
So is that not bad? I mean, when in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 5 through 8 says, slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling.
Yeah, but you need to understand the sort of, I think that today I joke today that I'm a slave, okay? Because you're 16, you probably don't understand. I mean, you have a job, right? You probably have a part-time job or a full-time job.
Well, technically it's casual work, so my shifts change, but yeah, it would be like part-time.
Okay.
I've had
anyway, when you, I mean, I'm not a good example because I'm a very lazy person and I hate work, but I joke that I'm a slave because it's painful for me. It's painful going to work. My whole life long, it's always been painful going to work, and I've always felt like a slave. Like, why do I need to go and give my time to this guy or this corporation or this group or whatever it is? It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to have fun. So I've always felt like a slave when I'm giving my precious time just so I can eat and pay my bills and pay my rent. That just seems like a crappy deal for me. I don't like that. Mm-hmm. But my church teaches me to be a good employee, aka a good slave. And it also tells my employer, aka my master, to treat me well. I don't see a difference. I don't see a difference. I don't see a difference. I really don't see a difference. It's like slavery when it's done well. Okay. Like the best treatment of a slave, the best life of a slave, I think, is better than the best job I've had in North America working for a corporation. Okay, I think
so
it's better.
Okay, but Exodus does not teach you to treat your slaves well.
Yeah, but the Exodus also teaches you all sorts of other stuff that was concession. For example, divorce, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, so on and so forth.
So Exodus was wrong about this stuff?
Ask Jesus.
I can't.
Well, you can read the Bible, and he says, "I came not to abrogate the law, but to fulfill the law." Right? He came not to.
So doesn't that mean that this is correct?
It means that there's stuff there's stuff reported. For example, there's reported speech in the Bible where people say things like there is no God, right? But we know we don't just open the Bible at random and then read the part that says there is no God and say, oh, I just opened the Bible and today, what did you learn in the Bible today, Billy? Oh, today I opened it randomly. I learned that there is no God. No, you need to understand the context.
That parts of the Old Testament are wrong.
There's wrongness reported. There's reported speech. There's a history of, for example, unjust things that are done by all of the patriarchs. Right? Like they're doing some good stuff and they're doing some bad stuff.
Aren't these supposed to be kind of commandments from God?
Well, yeah, but they're concessions. Just like, well, I can't speak for everything. I can't filter everything. The reason I focus on divorce and eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is because Jesus Christ, who is God incarnate, according to my worldview, he told us that Moses was making a concession for the hard-hearted because of your hardness of heart. He was making concessions with those and some other examples. Okay, so there's a perfection of the law that takes place over time as these stupid, selfish, stiff-necked people, the chosen people, the Jews, were going through this journey, learning how to know God and to love God and to serve God in this life, so that ultimately, so they could be happy with God forever in the next life. So you can't just look at it like that everyone is a hero in the Bible and everyone's doing the will of God, and when it's reported that God said this and God said that it's necessarily the case. You can't assume that.
Okay, but isn't it also reported that God said the world was created in 6 days? Like, how can you trust that?
Because that's because that's what the overwhelming magisterial weight of hundreds and thousands of years of the saints of the early church fathers and the documents of the church and the encyclicals and the ecumenical councils, which are infallible, and the infallible pronouncements of the biblical commission, the magisterial weight of that mountain versus a few offhand comments by some recent popes.
They also think that people also thought that slavery was wrong. Like, you can't just say people used to think it, so it's true. People thought the earth was flat. The Bible teaches that the earth is flat.
Right. But what you don't understand is that church has three attributes. The church has indefectibility. It will always be here. Like every other corporation, organization, government, monarchy is all crumbled, but the church is still here. Indefectibility. We believe that the church will be here till the very end. Okay. The other one is authority, a God-given authority. The third one is infallibility. The church is unable to err when teaching truth and pertaining to faith and morals, okay? In very specific context, in a very limited way, there's a way where the church is able to teach and it's guaranteed not to fall into error. That doesn't mean that individuals in the church can't be wrong. It doesn't mean that popes can't say things that are just opinion. It doesn't mean that. You need to understand the three attributes of the church. And then you understand that it is an infallible teaching of the living magisterium throughout all the ages that the early church fathers are infallible when they have a moral unanimity, right? A moral consensus.
So what if in the future, so you're saying that the early church fathers were right, but the new ones are wrong?
There are no, they're council fathers, right? They're bishops that meet.
Imagine for a second a hypothetical future where everyone in the church agrees that evolution happened. What does that say about evolution?
Are you talking about a dogmatic pronouncement by a pope or a
like all
council?
The popes, like let's say for the next 100 years, all the popes, all the bishops, all the archbishops all said that they believed that evolution happened.
They're expressing that. How do they express that? How do they communicate that?
In public and in private. They tell everyone when they're asked, they say,
I'm asking you a very technical question. Is it taught as dogma that must be believed, or is it just expressed as a personal opinion? Because up until
Dogma.
now, well, if it's taught as dogma, then it's true.
Right, but then what if it was, how does that make it? I just don't understand how you can trust that, because it's also taught as dogma now.
It's not taught
that
as dogma now.
creationism is true, isn't it?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Creationism is not taught as...
No. It's not. It hasn't been defined dogmatically. It happens to be my preference. But if the church says it's wrong, then I just go with the church.
Right.
I just don't happen to think the church is going to go that way.
But so do you think that the church can override the Bible?
No. The church
gets
the church gets all of its truths, all of its saving truths from what's called the sacred deposit of faith, which includes the sacred scriptures and sacred tradition, because the Bible was given to us by God through the instrumentality of the church, the infallible church, who defined this book is in, this book is out, and this is the canon, and these are the infallible. This is the infallible canon of the inerrant word of God, right? So you really need to, if you want to understand my Catholic faith, you need to understand indefectibility. The church will always be here, and it was founded by Christ.
But
authority and
in
infallibility. Yeah, of course there are apparent contradictions in the Bible, and there are genuine contradictions reported in the Bible. Just like if you do a newscast about what the Prime Minister of Canada said, right? You're going to see contradiction. It's a report. It's a news report. So if you say, King so-and-so said something to a prophet, the king could be having 1,000,001 different political reasons why he's lying and manipulating the Jewish people. Like there are plenty of examples of that. And you could even have the patriarchs like David lying to his neighbor and saying, "Oh, why don't you get drunk tonight? So so that you and have sex with your wife, so that you don't figure out that I screwed your wife." You know what I mean? Like there are lots of examples of corruption among the patriarchs who are now in heaven, reigning gloriously, right? Because they repented. And the ones that didn't repent, sadly, are probably not in heaven. I mean, depending on what was on the show.
Here's another question. Why would God create hell? And why not just create people and put them in heaven? Wouldn't that be better?
Well, there's this basic idea. It comes back to free will again. You can only love freely. That's what I tried to emphasize with you earlier on about.
But you said that there's free will in heaven. So wouldn't everyone, once being put in heaven, realize how good God is and love him freely?
Well, apparently not. I mean, there are people in hell. What does that tell you about their will? Their will was ill. They have ill will.
It tells me that God created a world that makes it very difficult to love him freely. You said that there's free will in heaven, correct?
Correct.
So if he put me in heaven, could I love him freely?
Or
could I choose to hate him?
Once you're in heaven, you can't choose to hate him.
So that's not free will.
Because you've been perfected, right? This is why we have purgatory, not only the supernatural purgatory after death, but we have a purgatory here. We have suffering here. We have tragedy here. We also have little tastes of heaven here. We have the saints here. We have the spiritual writings here. We have the church here. We have the sacraments. We have prayer. We have all sorts of things, good and bad. Little taste of heaven, little taste of hell, right? A little bit of purgatory here and now. So we're able to be perfected. We could be perfected here. That's what the saints did. They were perfected here in this life, and then they went straight to heaven. Okay, so same thing with martyrs. When they suffer and die for Jesus Christ and for their faith, they go straight to heaven. They don't need to go to purgatory. Even if they're sinners, there's stories about priests who are great sinners hanging out in the whorehouse, and someone came into the whorehouse and was killing everyone, and he repented and he did a great heroic act of virtue, and he saved some lives and this and that and the other thing, and he did it out of love for Christ, and he went straight to heaven as a martyr. He's canonized as a saint, even though he was hanging out in whorehouses as a priest and being a bad priest. But he made a choice. He made a choice for Christ at that distinct moment.
All you have to do in your life is love Jesus, and you get infinite reward, and you could be the best person possible, not love Jesus and get eternally punished.
No, it's not like that. You have to work with the light that you're given, and work with your conscience. What do you know? How educated are you?
If I was a fantastically great person, right, decided that I didn't believe in Jesus, but I donated all my money to charity, let's say I had $1 billion and I gave it all away, versus you, presumably not having $1 billion, but believing in Jesus and
You could give it to
repenting.
me.
Yeah, but like, what happens? Do
Okay,
I
if
still
you-
go to hell?
If because you don't have the supernatural gift of faith, hope, and love, the gifts of the virtues of faith, hope, and love, the theological virtues, you don't have those. You only have natural virtue. So when you do something good, it's not for God. You're not doing it for God. So it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. You give away all the money, it doesn't matter. It's like St. Paul says, if you don't have love, then it doesn't matter how much good stuff you do. It doesn't matter. You have to have love. You have to have love of God first and love of neighbor for God's sake. So it doesn't matter what you do. But if by the grace of God you have a conversion, because God sees that you are good, you have this natural virtue, and you're a very virtuous atheist, and your heart is soft for your fellow man.
Right, but the main reason
He
why I
will
don't
give you the
believe
gift
in
of conversion.
God is because there's so many contradictions in the Bible. Why would he create a book with so many contradictions?
Apparent contradictions and
Okay.
reported genuine contradictions. But my advice to you don't have to take advice from me. This is unsolicited advice. So you don't have to take it. But
Sure.
I would say I've been where you are in terms of atheism. I've been an atheist, and I've been a Christian. I've been a monotheist. I've been a Catholic. And I would ignore. My advice to you is to ignore religion and to ignore the religious books, the Quran, the Bible, the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
I would advise you to ignore those until such time as you believe in the uncaused first cause. Then you can start shopping around for religion.
I have no reason to believe in an uncaused first cause.
Well, because everything that you encounter that's not God is contingent, and it is dependent on, for its very existence, on other contingent beings, right? So I don't have time right now. I've been an hour and 46 minutes on the phone with you, and I do have to get back to my wife here. But I would leave you with a little bit of homework. It's not mandatory homework, and you've got a lot of other stuff on your plate, I'm sure. But since you're interested in theology and since you're interested in philosophy, I would recommend, and I'll send you some links after this, that you look into the Blessed John Duns Scotus Modal Argument, which is that a posteriori argument, which is a strict demonstration. And I would recommend you look into that. I'll send you some links, because the reason I'm suggesting it is because it's not a priori argument such as the ontological argument, and it completely avoids the issue of free will, and it completely avoids the issue of how old is the universe, when did the universe begin,
Okay.
and you could have an eternal universe. It's completely sidesteps those issues. So basically, it gives you a laser focus on the essential things to get what you need to get to the uncaused first cause. And then, if you're honest with yourself, if you love the truth and you are willing to follow the truth, no matter where it leads, if you really truly believe in the uncaused first cause, then you will acknowledge, okay, I am a generic monotheist. I'm not a Jew,
Okay.
I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Muslim.
Sure.
But I believe in, for lack of a better word, I believe in God. And from there, you're going to have all kinds of graces, I assure you. How do I know that? Because that's where I was, and I felt infused knowledge. I felt graces.
So send me those resources on Discord or something.
Yeah.
I will read them. Do you mind if, whenever you're free again, we can
Yeah.
again?
For sure.
Awesome, man.
We could have talked a lot longer tonight. I love talking with you. It's just that I was late coming to the meeting, and we had previously scheduled to do it 2 hours earlier. Just things happened, as sometimes happen.
You said you were detained. Do you mean like by a person or by the police?
No, just by circumstances.
Concerned.
No, it was just by circumstances. There was an issue I had in the family I had to deal with.
That's fine. Is everything okay now?
Yeah, I don't. It's complicated. I don't even want to get into it. It's just
that's fine.
I had some things happen, and then I went on a long roundabout. That sort of delayed my day, and then I had to go to church. Fine. I went to confession, and then when I got home, I had things in the plumbing situation, and it's just sometimes you have a day like that where things just don't go too well.
I hope things get better for you.
I appreciate it. Really nice to meet you, Alex. Thanks for taking the time, and you're a pleasant young man. You seem bright, and you seem like you're, interested in ideas and the truth and questioning things and reading and studying, and I'm interested to see if we could go a little bit deeper and maybe clarify some of the ambiguities where we weren't able to make progress with either free will or with some of the questions where maybe my answers weren't satisfying to you, and or maybe where I wasn't able to be clear enough. And maybe we can, next time, we can sort of use this first talk that we did to set the stage for going deeper into what's most essential for you, where you are right now in your journey and in your understanding of ontology, because I think ontology is key.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm of the opinion that epistemology depends on ontology. So I think if you get your ontology right, then your epistemology will fall into place. We can talk about that too as a separate sort of side note philosophically,
Yep.
Metaphysics generally. But we'll try to go deeper, and we'll try to get a more satisfying resolution to some of your questions, because I feel like today we sort of skirted over a couple of very important issues, and maybe you gave me some stuff to think about, maybe it gave you some things to think about, but we didn't really make any great breakthroughs either way. So next time we'll try to just focus a little bit more and go a little bit deeper about those particular topics that you're most interested in. But if you do listen back to this, you can sort of hone in on those next time we talk. But when's your next opportunity? Did you want to touch base again in a week, or 2 weeks, a month, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, send me those resources. I'll read them at, like, when I can, and then maybe from there, like, same time, just like whatever week it happens to be. So like if it takes me a week to read them, then the week after.
Okay, this is a good slot for you. It's your Sunday morning, right? It's your Sunday morning. Okay. And so take good care. It's right now it's 12 midnight here. It must be 2 p.m. there?
Yeah, it's coming up on 2, yeah.
Okay. So have a great day. Enjoy your time, and I'll send you those links and we'll talk very soon, okay?
Awesome. Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Bye.